good mood? Yeah. I'm in a really good mood. I got Wordle in 3 guesses. Really good mood, really good mood. But my name is David Leiter, and I have the pleasure of serving as KPMG's managing partner for our 2,000 plus KPMGers in our Atlanta hub. I'm Milford's successor, and he and I have a joke. Big shoes to fill, Milford, big shoes to fill. But glad you're here. And but super proud of our firm and especially our Ignition Center in Midtown, where over 300 data scientists work on extreme automation projects for our clients. And this group has enjoyed presentations from us recently on 5G private networks, if you remember that presentation, as well as cryptocurrency. So I'm always happy to serve. David knows I'm happy for us to serve as a backup presenter anytime you need it on interesting topics, such as health equity, perhaps. But anyway, today it's my pleasure to introduce you to our featured speaker and my friend, Ravi Saligram. Ravi, as you heard, is the CEO of Newell Brands, a Fortune 300 that designs, manufactures, sources, and distributes commercial products worldwide. We are all familiar with and use many of their iconic brands. Like me, Newell was Atlanta-based, left for a little while, and has returned. So today we'll hear from Ravi about the factors that led to Newell's return to our great city. The diverse, highly educated workforce, the business climate, our city's culture, the Atlanta way. We will hear about leadership today. Every one of us leads people. We lead organizations to achieve results. Ravi's vision and focus on culture, innovation, insights led to the turnaround of Newell Brands in less than 3 years. Ravi has achieved such spectacular results in such a short period of time. He shares our Rotarian commitment to people and community. And as you will see in a moment, Ravi has enthusiastic energy. He can explain complex topics in easily understandable ways. He quickly creates interest in his topic of choice, and he's a very, very effective storyteller. Fun fact, Ravi and I share the love of wine. So when you look at a bottle of wine, what do you see? The shape of the bottle? Is it red wine? Is it white wine? Is the label interesting? This is what Ravi sees. Who's the winemaker? What's their story? From where are they? How did they learn their craft? How well are they regarded? Who's the producer? How did they come to own the vineyards? The domain? Has it passed through generations, for decades, for centuries? Who grew the grapes and how? Organically? Biodynamically? The terroir, the soil, the weather, the vintage. Every bottle of wine tells a story, and that relationship with that bottle enhances your experience. Ravi is a master storyteller, and he shapes attitudes and mindsets, and he makes you feel like you are in his story. He builds trust and drives employee engagement and achieves results. I'm so excited to hear from Ravi today, and I know that you will be too. Without further ado, please join Stephanie, Maria, and me in welcoming Ravi Saligram.
Okay, I'm Maria Saporta. I have the pleasure of being a journalist in town, And that's how I got to know Ravi. I guess it was June of 2020. The world had changed right at that moment, and I caught him, and I think he's always this way, but in a very open mood and talking about what he was experiencing at Newell. And then I had another interview with him 2 years later, and the change that had occurred in those 2 years, and actually his now almost 3 years as CEO, is pretty astounding. And I was hoping you could share with the group, how did you lead the turnaround? How did you find the company when you got there? I remember you telling me that one of the reasons you took the CEO job was because you read how demoralized the employees were, and that broke your heart. So take it from there.
Thank you so much, Maria. Good afternoon, everybody. And David, thank you for that most flattering introduction. I'm embarrassed because I think the introduction will be far better than my remarks. So I hope I don't let you or Maria down. But thank you for that. And so it's a real honor for me to be here with such luminaries. And so let me talk a little bit about the Newell turnaround journey. I've been there just a little less than 3 years. And Newell, it's a long-standing company, grown through different acquisitions, and you've seen some iconic brands like Ball, Coleman, etc. And really, that's one of our greatest strengths is our brands. And our last foray was when Newell Rubbermaid, as it was called, bought the Jardine Corporation, which was a much bigger company than Newell. And so that, it was a very expensive acquisition, and unfortunately, for different reasons, the integration perhaps didn't go as well, and the thesis didn't quite work out. So, so with that, the board decided, there was activists who came in, et cetera, and the board decided to make a change, and I was brought in since I was long in the tooth, and sometimes at least they felt a guy who's as old as I am probably didn't have such a big ego. And so when they saw my size, they said, yeah, at least he's devoted himself to prosperity, and let's hope his ego won't come in the way. So I was running Ritchie Brothers, and I know one lady came up to me. I was so delighted she actually knew what that was. It was a company that was in the auction business of heavy equipment, and I had done a run there for 5 years, and we had transformed it from a brick and mortar auctioneer to an online company. So when the board approached me, I was like, hey, shouldn't I just finish this up? And so I was not really sure, but I looked at all the Glassdoor reviews that Maria talked about, and I was really, when I read all this, I read 510 of those comments, and it really bothered me that they were in the States, so maybe a little self-righteous, but I thought, hey, maybe I can help. So the situation when I joined Newell was the company was in turmoil. Employees were very, very suspicious, and a real sense of apathy. To give you an example of that, our engagement scores about a year before had been at 37%, and then when I joined and we had a review, it was 45%, and the consultant said, hey, it's going to take you 10 years before you get even close to decent norms. So my very first day when I did my town hall, I said, look, this is going to be a people-first company. And so that was really what we've articulated, and we changed the team. There was a lot of complexity. We had 110,000 SKUs, so a lot of brands, but a lot of SKUs, 46 ERP systems, Thousands of legal entities, thousands of websites. You wanted complexity, its middle name was Newell. So since then, we're down to now about 35,000 SKUs, down to 2 ERP systems, all that in about 3.5 years. And we had been declining in terms of top line growth for 4 years. And so we put a lot of focus on innovation, restoring our brands so that they were not, iconic is great and it's in a positive sense, but iconic can mean looking back. And so we didn't want it to be, we wanted them to be brands of the future. So much so now Yankee Candle, we're launching a new brand after Gen Z called the Friday Collective, which is all about energy. And so we really said, hey, this is a company about innovators and innovation and about consumers, and we brought that DNA back. Fortunately, I assembled a great team, and I'm very proud to say that 4 of my leaders who run the business units are all female. And when I came, there was only one. And so we've expanded that, and we've expanded a lot of diversity in the company. And that has all resulted in great results. We've had 8 quarters of top-line growth. Our debt was at fixed 5.6 times net debt to EBITDA. We've brought it down to 3. So on every measure, we've had really good progress, and that's because I would say the secret sauce has been empowered employees who reignited our brands and brought passion back. And so I feel a tremendous sense of joy that our people, we're bringing the best out of them, and that's because of our teams and our great leaders.
So, no, keep the mic. When I first interviewed you, it was right after the George Floyd and the riots, and you talked about what you did to try to explore the state of race within Newell. Can you describe what you did?
Sure. And Maria, on that, I grew up with 5 aunts. My father was in the military and would be in these non-family stations in India. So I grew up with my grandparents, my aunts, and my mother played a big role. So for me, I was always very big on gender and making sure women could fulfill their potential, because my father died at a young age and my mother was left to fend for herself in India. And so that's been a driving force. And I've made it a real point in every assignment of mine to make sure that we are pushing that, not because I feel there's so many things women bring to the party that sometimes men don't, that the complementarity creates amazing stuff. But I had really not, and shame on me, but until that time I had not given a lot of thought to the lives of African Americans. And being an immigrant and being brown, for me it was like, gee, if you really drive yourself with merit, the American dream's available. Somehow when George Floyd's assassination happened, and I'd seen all the others, something went off in my brain that day. And I said, this is not right. And I started, it just for me viscerally had a real impact. And so I thought about it a lot and said, hey, and as I pondered, and I'd had conversations with some of my black employees, one who is a leader in our car seat labs here in the safety labs, he said he had been stopped that year 22 times by the police for no reason other than the fact that he was black. And that really bothered me. And so that sort of said, hey, we've got to do something. So I wrote that one night later, this note called Embracing Your Humanity. And then I got our black employee group, affinity group, because I was worried, hey, because I wrote that personally, and will this offend? And I read it out to them, and I said, can I send it to the whole company? And they said, of course you must. And many of them had tears. And they said, you actually have the courage to send that out? And because most CEOs are a little, because it was very direct. And I did send it out. And I think that has begun the journey in our company of really making DE&I a little bit more than just a slogan. And when we, by the way, I was telling you about our poor engagement scores. We just did our scores in November, and we were actually at 75% at world-class norms, and on 11 different metrics, we were better than some of the top companies. And so and a lot of that, one of the biggest things was people at Newell felt they could be themselves. They felt a sense of belonging. And I think this whole letter and then all the actions we took, I think has really unified, it's helped unify people. Do you want me to?
You have a copy of the letter.
I can read maybe a couple of sentences.
But you'll need to hold the mic, though.
Yeah, I will. Even though I have a caring voice, but let me make sure. So this was, why does history keep repeating itself? Why do pleas of I can't breathe keep echoing? Why has so little changed? When will the pain and sadness end? Well, when will mothers and fathers stop fearing day and night whether their black sons and daughters will come home safely? We must not just remember these names as hashtags. I sincerely hope this tragedy will galvanize Americans, black, brown, white, Democrat, independent, Republican, male, female, or however one identifies, to come together to acknowledge and reject racism and discrimination of any kind. As Americans, we need to proactively address aspects of our society in which discrimination and racism are systemic and root them out. We need to open our hearts and truly believe that every one of us is equal, not succumb to tawdry stereotypes or allow the insidious hand of unconscious bias to seep deep into our souls. And I close out in one of my paragraphs saying, I am the eternal optimist. I continue to have great faith in the idea of America, the American ideal, and the generosity of its people. I'm a big believer in the American dream, and I've been fortunate to be able to experience it. At the same time, I've noticed that in my 42 years living in America, that this dream is eluding many, and the disparities in our society are widening. As we pay homage to the memories of George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, and thousands of others, let us commit to reimagining and rebuilding America to make the American dream available to all and not a select few.
So while all of this was going on, you had your own personal journey, and I was hoping you could share with Rotary what you went through at home. And you'll need your mic again. Just.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that gentle reminder. So this was actually a little bit after my older daughter, Sunita. She was at that time working at Twitter, and she'd gone to the Kennedy School to do a MPA. And one day she announced to us that she really liked this chap, and he is from Côte d'Ivoire. And so look, it's an interesting thing, because we can all talk theoretically about D&I and be clinical and so on, but when the rubber meets the road in your own family, and no matter how objective you are and how you may feel, but when it comes to your doorstep, and at first, I have to confess, I was really startled, because my image was that she would either marry someone of Indian origin or someone who was a white American. And because that had been with my other cousins and so on. So for me, this was a little bit of a shock. And I know that she had always been interested in Africa because she was 14 when she'd gone by herself, and she, in her undergraduate, done Africana studies and so on. But at first, I must confess, I was startled, and so it was not easy. And so I said, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yes," but she said, "If you are," and we are very close, my daughters and I and my wife, because we've lived in 6 countries, and as expats, you become a very close unit.
And you said they have kept you very humble.
Oh,
Whenever
very
you-
much. Any ego I had, my wife first drove out, and then my daughters completely extinguished it. There's the thing about the Indian wife, the stereotype when I first came to America. They always said, they had this view of Indian women standing and walking behind the male, 3 feet behind. And I said, my wife is absolutely that, except she has a gun in her hand. And when she says jump, I just say, despite my girth, how high can I go up? So my wife is a very independent and feisty woman. And that's, we have daughters who are independent and can think for themselves. But this was tough. And so I had to really go through all of this. I'm saying, hey, it's great to send out these beautiful letters, which are but inside my heart, am I reacting the way because my daughter's boyfriend is black and from Africa? Does that mean inside, am I actually a racist? And it's so easy to lecture other people about this, but can I really? So I went through a very deep reckoning with myself, and and I told we had conversations as a family, and then we met him, and so fortunately I was able to see him as an individual, and then realized, hey, over time my feelings were less about not racist, but it was more, we didn't have a lot of common things, and how do we build that? Because of conditioning, we think in a certain way, and we react in a certain way because society and everything that we've conditioned. And so that is really, it's been interesting. I was in Naperville, and we were driving one night, and I have a Bentley, and we were, I'd never been stopped by a policeman. We went through a light, and my future son-in-law was sitting in the front with me. We were stopped by the policeman. And I was shocked because I've never had a ticket in my life. I don't speed, and we pulled over. And the officer, he was quite suspicious. I was very polite. And then he mentioned something about, hey, you were Georgia licensed, but Illinois plates, and I explained it, but he let us go. But I was wondering, I've always wondered, did he stop me because he saw a black man sitting next to me? Don't know. But these are the things we encounter. And look, my daughter's now married, and very happily, and what I like is that my son-in-law really cares about her, which is ultimately what matters, and that he's a person of great character. And just yesterday I found out that she's pregnant, so it's all good.
So one of the fun stories was that at the wedding, they actually had 3 weddings, a Hindu wedding, right, and then an African wedding, and then a celebration with friends that was kind of culturally neutral, I guess. But you talked about all the coming together of the cultures that within the family, and also in a similar way at Newell, is bringing people to think of themselves. You call it one Newell, one family.
Yeah, I think, look, we have 7 different business units and so many brands.
And he calls them business units and not divisions, and maybe you can share that.
They used to be called divisions, and I banned that word because I felt the very fact you use the word division means divide. And I wanted to unify. And so we came up with the formula that businesses needed to be front-facing for the consumer and customers. But we were acting like 7 $1 billion plus companies rather than a $10 billion company and leveraging the scale. So we said, hey, we've got to unify all the back because we had to reduce the complexity. And with customers, we also, they were like, hey, we want one throat to choke, not all these people from Newell that come from every different place. And so this has been the quest. How do you create brand distinction on one side, on the other hand, a unification of one company? And so we call this One Newell, which is whether it's reducing complexity or the culture, because I didn't want several cultures and several brands, brand cultures. I wanted one Newell culture. And for that, we created this vision and purpose and mission and so on. And one of the whole points was about creating moments of joy and peace of mind for the consumer because we're a branded company. But the other side was about values. And we created they were like, we had a litany of about 13, 14 values, typical like in any company, but no one really read them, believed them. So we made it very simple, just 4, we call them the 4 T's, about trust, transparency, teamwork. So this was the whole idea of transparency, trust and teamwork.
There's a missing T.
I'm just having a senior moment. Truth. Truth, it starts with truth, trust, transparency, which ultimately builds trust. And what we did was we let the employees talk about this, bring it to life throughout the world, and now the employees own it. In fact, I was in Bentonville visiting Walmart, and I went to our offices and saw this big board where employees had written celebrating other fellow peers about how they were embodying those values and bringing it to life. And then in every town hall, the site leader was naming those people. And I thought that's great because you really want values to, it can't be Ravi Saligram's values, who forgets one of the 4. It has to be the people's values, and that has helped us unify this company because everyone, even though they may be in the home fragrance business unit or the appliances business unit, they think of themselves as Team Newell.
I can see Stephanie coming. I know we're going to open up to questions, but my last question to you
Yes.
is your relationship with Atlanta. I mean, Newell first moved to Atlanta in 2003 and was here until 2016 when it moved to New Jersey, and then it came back here in 2019. Your relationship with Atlanta and your challenge to Atlanta, can you share that with the group?
Terrific. Yeah, we had moved the headquarters, and then as I started, my CFO, Chris Peterson, and I and the board took a decision to move the headquarters back to Atlanta, and for different reasons. And I started here. I never started. I did go to the office there in New Jersey, saw the beautiful, I had a palatial office there. I have a very small functional one here. It overlooked the ocean and all of that. But despite all of that, we said, hey, the place to be is Atlanta for a few different reasons. Number one, 3 of our business units, food, writing, and baby, were here. And so you always want, as headquarters, not to be ivory tower. You want to be close to the businesses and so that you're not breathing rarefied air. And 2, there is something magical about Atlanta in terms of the diversity of talent and the people and the oneness. And one of the things I feel about Atlanta, I lived here 20 years ago when I moved from the UK to here when I was running the Holiday Inn North American franchise business. And I just felt so welcomed. My daughter, Sunita, that we just spoke about, she was, I think she'd come from the UK, she was in 8th grade, and we came 2 months late after classes had begun, and yet she was elected class president. And so to me, this is the thing about this at Westminster, and I said, hey, this is such a welcoming place. And I think it's sort of, it can be a model city in America. And to me, when I think about the A in Atlanta, it sort of stands for assimilate and aggregate and and be altruistic. And so there is so many beautiful aspects that I think we've got in the long term that we can build here.
All right.
So do we have RK, welcome back.
Can you hear me? You mentioned a lot of unique things about Atlanta. Can you mention one thing about Atlanta which struck you the most?
Yeah, I think in terms of what I just said on Atlanta, I do, at least it strikes me that as a city, there are a lot of people who come in here as immigrants from different parts of the country and the world. But once they come here, they get absorbed in the fabric and become very proud Atlantans. And so in that regard, I see it as a very welcoming place. And and to me, the thing about it is, if Atlanta cannot fulfill the utopian dream of one America, just as I talked about one Newell, I'm like, which city can really do it in America? And this has all the ingredients with a thriving business climate, diverse population. So it's an exciting place to be. So that's why I'm excited about the future prospects.
Ravi, you mentioned that you've long had supportive women. Your mother was a single mom raising kids. You've got women leaders now in your company. The pandemic really exposed a lot of needs of working families, particularly around childcare. What are the policies that Newell implements for working families around leave, childcare, et cetera? What do you guys do as a company?
Yeah, and that is continuing to be work in progress, Stephanie. First, what the pandemic taught us, and look, we had to create this turnaround where we were one of the first companies that decided to go remote and work remote. And and then we spent a lot of time talking about, I have these 5 C's, but one of the C's I talked about was compassion and call to your conscience. Because this is the same time the social justice movement had started. So what we showed when we talked about people first was that, hey, that was really in action. And one of the things, when we went remote, we'd do silly things like have meetings at 12 o'clock during the lunch hour. And then we realized, as we talked to some of our female employees, the burden, if they had kids in their house, they're also being tutored, they have to cook, and they have to work late. So we started really creating things saying, hey, don't do meetings at lunch hour. Make sure that we are disciplined about, just because we're remote, you can't call someone up at 9 o'clock, and don't call people up on the weekends. So I think a lot of this was also attitudes. And we had another challenge. At the same time, we have several hundred factories and distribution centers. Our hourly people did not have the luxury of going remote. They still had to come in. So one of the things has been a lot about employee safety. At the same time, going very directly to your question, we've been working hard about looking at all aspects of things like parental leave. And with the latest issues that have come with the Supreme Court ruling, how do we make sure that people who want female employees who want access, how can we help them? At the same time, people who want help with fertility, etc., how can we support them? So that we're looking at all of this. The other thing we've done is create these employee resource groups. And one of the things that I should say is with the Roe versus Wade ruling, our female employee group, which we call RAY, my CHRO and I hosted them on Teams, and we had 650 employees from around the world, including people from France and Canada, even though the ruling was in the United States. And we engaged them in a conversation. And it didn't matter which side of the spectrum they were on the ruling. But the very fact we facilitated the dialogue, they felt safe to express themselves. And with their peers, and their peers who might have been on a different side of the viewpoint, were at least willing to listen. And so this is very emotional, and my female employees were rather surprised that a male CEO would actually listen. And and I keep telling them, look, I have two daughters who are 34 and 32. They're constantly trying to educate me and change my mind about things. But we're looking at a whole host of benefits. But the most important thing, even though we're back to work, is about flexibility. We're not about checking the box and looking at the time. As long as you get your work done, we try very hard to show flexibility to our employees. And I think that creates a lot of loyalty. And that's one of the reasons these engagement scores have gone up.
One area where you were not flexible was vaccinations. Can you just say it real quickly?
Sure. We, in last November, we saw our vaccination rate in our office people was 59%. And I felt, hey, if we're going to get people back to work, that's just not good enough. And unlike other companies which are rich, we're in a turnaround. I couldn't offer people $1,000, $2,000 to get vaccinated. But all the stuff we had shown on People First, I felt we got a lot of soundings, and I just mandated that people had to get vaccinated. And that if we didn't, unless they had a religious exemption or a medical exemption, if they didn't get vaccinated, we had to part company. And we did it, and now we had to part company with less than 50 people. And we worked very hard. We brought in, for 2 years, we've had a consultant, Dr. Sonia Rasmussen from the CDC, formerly from the CDC. So we did spend a lot of time educating employees on COVID. But this was all about, hey, you may want your independence in your viewpoint, but if you're into teamwork, which is one of our values, you have to worry about other people. So if you want to come back to the office, that was what we had to do.
Clark, you get the last question.
Great, thank you, and congrats again on such a remarkable turnaround. I think a lot of folks in the room have struggled with culture and shared experiences in a time where you have some people that are together and some people that are working remote. But it seems like you've done a really nice job across the complexity of brands, bringing people together and creating shared experiences. What advice would you give for folks who are maybe living in a hybrid world, and how you're creating that sense of shared experience across brands that creates that catalytic culture that allows for the kind of business performance you've been able to achieve?
Thank you for that. I think one good technology is important in a hybrid side. The hybrid ones are the most difficult meetings, as you all know, versus where everyone is in person or everyone is on your platform. So we look at which meetings, depending on the type of meeting. We may just go all online because it may be easier, so we work on that. But I think a lot of that has to do with, we still feel, even in a hybrid, try to bring people. So one of the things we have, like in all our offices, is something we call the snack attack, where on a particular day like Thursday, we say, come down to the cafe, we provide free stuff. That creates mingling of people. I think that in-person contact, whichever way you get it, allows you to be better in hybrid. And people find when they're connecting with other people, there's no greater joy than human contact. So I think the more we can create that, and for younger people, that sense of apprenticeship, the sense of walking in and getting the ideas, I think is really important, so working at it.
One thing that you told me is that you are happier than you've ever been running Newell, and that you're having so much fun. Can you just share kind of the excitement that you have being here at this point in
Yeah,
time?
my biggest regret is I didn't join Newell 10 years ago. Even though I don't feel 66, but I don't think of it as work. I love our brands. I love our people. Every day I wake up and can't wait to go to the office or get on a meeting at home. And it's more because at this age of mine, I'm less concerned about what it means for me. It's just seeing the progress of our people and the company and doing good, because our people also take doing good. And I keep saying to them, hey, you've got to be a force for good. And it's genuine. And that a company in turnaround can actually get all of this. It just gives you some hope. That and I keep telling our people, we can't change America, but we can change our company. And so my employees give me the greatest joy, because ultimately our brands are a reflection of the ingenuity of our people. And our people are our secret sauce.
People
Please join
first,
me
you heard
in
it.
thanking Ravi. I'm sure he will be here for a few moments to answer any questions. I know, Cannon, we didn't get to you, but hopefully we will see you next week. And our speaker, David Lewis, is?
The panel is The Heat is On.
The heat is on. We've all been experiencing high temperatures. We're bringing some experts in to talk about what that means for the city. See you next week.